Where did Christianity go so wrong? Hi, I'm Christian Nielsen, and this has been a question I've struggled with for a long time. How did we get from the gospel of Jesus, teaching us to turn the other cheek, to love our neighbor, to love our enemies, to welcome the stranger, to heal the sick, to help the poor, to feed the hungry? How did we get from the teachings of Jesus to people who claim to be Christian and support policies that harm the very people that Jesus wanted them to help? How did we get to the point where we have Christians who claim to be Christians and followers of Christ who support what ICE is doing, the utter barbarity of the things that they are doing in our communities? How did we get to this place? It's kind of a long story, but I will try and keep it short. I believe that there is an absolute moment where Christianity went bad. But let's go back to the beginning. Initially, Christianity was a sect of Judaism. At least Christians, they didn't probably call themselves that yet either, but Christians thought of themselves as a sect of Judaism. But as they started to move further and further from Judaism, Jews said, hey, this is really your own religion. You need to create your own space, and this just isn't working with us. And I'm going to say this, I believe rightly so. They said, it's time for you to move on. And that's fine and good, except there's a problem. And that problem is the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire forced all citizens everyone who lived within the empire had to give money and worship the gods of the Roman Empire. They had to worship the emperor as the Son of God, whoever that may be. So Jews, having been around a long time, the one thing that the Roman Empire did value were things that were old, traditions that were old. So they left Jewish people alone. And they let them practice their religion however they wanted. They had this sort of, I wouldn't say protective status, but they were allowed to do their own thing. And so when all of a sudden, again, I think rightly so, the Jews said, I think you need to, this is your own religion. You need to leave and create your own space. But that made a problem for those who claimed to follow Jesus. And then all of a sudden, they didn't have that protection. And they were forced to swear allegiance to, and to worship, and to give money to the pagan, which is a little different meaning today than it did back then, but to the pagan gods of the Roman Empire. It was about power, and it was about strength for the empire, and it was about being absolutely loyal to the empire. This was how you showed your patriotism. And if you didn't, something was wrong. So Christians were persecuted. It's sometimes overblown, but there's some really terrible things in there, which I'll spare us from. But Christians were not treated well because they wouldn't follow those rules, and because they followed the God of Jesus. So for a little while there, they were not treated well. But then comes Emperor Constantine. He wasn't emperor yet at first. He was having a battle with Maxentius for control of the Roman Empire. And so he's looking for any edge he can get. And he's sort of intrigued by these Christians. He's kind of willing to let them go. And then he has a vision. And he has a dream where he saw a solar symbol, a cross, could potentially even, I'm thinking maybe like a sundog, in the sky. He saw this in the sky. And the words in Greek came to him, "In this sign you will conquer." So that sign was either the cross, it might have been the Chi-Rho, which is similar. But again, these are symbols of Jesus. And so he got the idea that if he put this sign on his soldiers' shields, that they would be victorious and that they could not be defeated. And there's this little thing called the Battle of the Milvian Bridge in 312. And Constantine's forces were vastly outnumbered, but they won. And it's funny, sometimes people talk about religion as superstition. I would say what Constantine doing was superstition. So he kept doing that. And he was sure that he'd been given the authority by God to rule the Roman Empire and pretty much anything else he wanted to. So he legalized Christianity and embraced it. It didn't actually become the state religion, but it became very, very prominent. And he started to listen to what the church was saying at the time. So, of course, being emperor and loving his power, he put himself as head of the church. No real background, no real training, just the head of the church. He just decided that was going to be him. And as a leader who ruled with power, hierarchy made a lot of sense to him. And see, these hippie Christians living in the way didn't have a power structure, but he understood hierarchy, and he thought that was important. So he created a hierarchy that much of the Catholic Church, and we still see vestiges of that in pretty much all denominations. So he puts himself as the head of the church, and he also realizes that dissent and disagreement threatens his power. So what do? You want to make sure that everybody believes the same, because any difference could threaten his power as a ruler and the stability of the empire. So he led the first church council. He called the first church council at Nicaea in 325 with the goal of creating structure and eliminating other views. You kind of see where this is going, right? This began the process of silencing other voices, including women, including minorities, including people who had different views and interpretations. He wanted uniformity of belief. So he called the Council of Nicaea, and that began the process of saying, this is what we will believe, and this is what we don't believe. And if you don't believe, you don't belong here. All of a sudden, it became about power, and it became about who is in and who is out. It reinforced this idea that might makes right. So the Christian church wed itself to empire, and that is where the church went horribly wrong. It began with the exile and murder of heretics, the Crusades. Later, it became the slaughter of indigenous peoples here in the United States, here even in Minnesota, and around the world, and taking the land, slavery, oppression of women, believing that God played favorites, and that God made the mighty mighty. And so God played favorites. Colonialism, imperialism, all of it stems from there. That complete misdirection of the church, when the church became about idolatry of power and not the teachings of love and mercy and justice that Jesus taught. The church is mostly not that anymore. There's churches that are reforming. We're seeing more and more progressive movements, and many have rejected this and have rejected the idea of empire and are working more toward the teachings of Jesus. Excluding LGBTQ people, excluding anyone who doesn't belong. Those are the vestiges of empire and power. And where are we now? Christian nationalism. I'm betting a lot of those folks in the ICE uniforms, and I know that a lot of the people that support them are Christian nationalisms. They claim to be followers of Christ, yet they go after everyone who's different. Not only do they not welcome the stranger, they work to harm them deeply. And yes, MAGA, this is you. I'm going to call that what it is. This is Christian nationalism. You don't worship Jesus. I am sorry. You worship power. And it's time to call it what it is. And I know that I'm probably losing a lot of followers here, and that's okay if this isn't the place for you. I'm not judging all other Christians, and I'm not judging necessarily everyone who voted for Donald Trump. But I am saying that this movement, this toxic movement, is based on a false version of Christianity. And it has done deep, deep harm throughout history. So that's probably a little more pointed than I'm usually going to get in some of these reflections, but I think it's really important that we call out the evil that is happening, the evil of ICE, the evil of Christian nationalism, the evil that the church has perpetrated time and time again for thousands of years. It took me a long time to realize in my life that my problem wasn't with Jesus. My problem was with the way the church behaves and the way people who call themselves Christian behave. So here we are. This is how we got here. I believe that these are things that we have got to name if we're ever going to work toward a more just society. I follow the way of Jesus. And yes, I also follow the ways of the Buddha and indigenous people and others, because the basic message, I know people whitewash this time and says they're the same. They're not exactly the same, but the essence is truth. The essence that we should love each other, that we should love ourselves, that we should care for our neighbors. My religion is love. Or as the Dalai Lama would say, my religion is kindness. And I welcome people of all different belief systems or even no belief systems into this space. But I want people to understand that I will never support the Christianity that puts kids in cages. I will never support the Christianity that goes door to door going after minorities or telling white families to tell them where the black people are and the brown people are. We know what this is. History has taught us what this is. It is evil, and we have to call it that. We must work in love. We cannot just fight evil because we hate it. We have to work for the things and protect and defend the things and the people that we love. That is important. Loving our neighbor is more important than empire ever could be. So here's our choice. Do we support the God of empire, which is an idol? Or do we support the God, the Creator, who teaches us that we are related, who teaches us that we should love our neighbors and love our enemies, as hard as that is? Martin Luther King actually said, because that's Martin Luther King Day is coming up. He even said that it's a good thing Jesus didn't command us to like others. He commanded us to love, and there is a difference. So let us work together toward justice. Let us do that peacefully, but remembering that peacefully doesn't always mean quiet. I know these are hard times, and I know that there is a lot of despair right now. I wake up with it too. And the saddest part to me is that there are people, my neighbors, and there are people that, call themselves Christians that support this utter barbarity. It needs to stop. I love you all. Work toward the good. Work to remember Renee Good, but work toward the good, no matter what you believe, and stand up against those who would divide us, those who would harm our neighbors. I love you all. Peace be with you. And even in these ugly times, especially in these ugly times, do your best to walk in beauty.
Sleep tonight, and may your dreams be realized. If the thundercloud passes rain, then let it rain. Rain down on him. So let it be.